I did war films. I did a lot of, every type of I think I did about every genre was. I didn't do horror films. You know, when an actor does a film, when his film's finished, you're finished. Then you wait till the next film, and that's all they were doing. It's westerns, and I had no choice but to do them. And in fact, I produced one and directed it, called Jesse and Lester, two brothers in a place called Trinity. I don't think it did very. I don't know how it happened here in America. It might have come on TV or something, but I got great critics. I did great in all the states were another type of film, but it didn't do that great in Naples or anything, because I wanted to do a comic, but I made sure that clothing were perfect. I was a mascalzone, a rascal, you might say. I'd written a thing, and I had it. My half-brother wanted to build a church, and I wanted to build a whorehouse. And the whole thing, the premise is that, and it was tongue-in-cheek, and it did all right, but I got great critics, which mean nothing. I'd worked for Zingarelli, and he had done the Trinity films. And so he made a whole village on these Trinity films. Those films did incredibly well, and you know, Italo thought they would do all right, but he didn't know they were going to be a big boom like that. And I mean, they were a huge boom. And then he did 2 or 3 more. And he actually became wealthy on those films. And so I asked him if I told him I was going to produce a film, and he let me for the only person that used the village and everything. And then he asked me, he said, well, what are you going to call the film? I said, Two Brothers in a Place Called Trinity. And he laughed, and then he said, of course you can't do it. I said, why not? Well, I put Jesse and Lester first, but he still said no. And we both happened to have the same lawyer. So they said, come on, Richard. And I said, no. And so by chance, I went to the encyclopedia, looked up, and there was a place, the film was when there was a gold strike in the place called Trinity. I looked it up, and in that year, there was a strike in a place called Trinity. And I showed them, and I said, you show me what you have, which shows it's legal. And I won the case right away. We were still made great friends. Italo was a wonderful man. But I won. I won, and it was just by chance. I had no idea. I just by chance looked it up in the encyclopedia and saw that I was right. I had done a Western, the first one that was ever done in the south of Spain. And it was right after Lawrence of Arabia had just done, the only people who had ever worked there was Lawrence of Arabia. And I did a film there. And then I came back and I did a film for Papi and Colombo. And it was a Western we shot in Spain, and Morricone did the music. I did the film for them, and it went well. And then they asked me to do another Western. I wasn't really, as I said, Western was John Ford and things like that. If you're going to do a Western, you want to do it with a real story. And not. I said no, thank you, and I wanted to do other films. And I kept getting a call from them, and I didn't know why they wanted me. Yes, I'd done that other Western, and it was with Morricone, and that was the first Western he'd ever done, the music. They kept, and I really didn't understand why. And they told me, all right, I'd done a Western for them, and I rode very well, and I was very good. I used to jump horses and everything, so. And I must say that a few American actors, they didn't know how to ride a horse or anything. A lot of them had never studied acting or ever. I had done not a lot of big parts, but I hadn't done the lead in the film, but I'd done a lot of parts, and I'd worked for several, as an actor, and with good training. So I didn't want to do this film, and I said, excuse me, why do you want me? And he said, well, the director wants you. And they told me who the director was, and he'd done one other film, which didn't make any money. So I asked 2 or 3 people in the business about it, and they said, well, they kind of said, no, he did one film, but they brushed him off a little bit. So I said no, and so after that, he actually came, and this fellow followed me around a little bit, and he was kind of strange because he looked like an owl to me. He had these big glasses, and that's all. He was just a little chubby fellow, and I asked the director I was working with at the time, who's this fellow who's following me around? And he said, oh, that's a new director named Sergio Leone. And I still didn't understand why. There was no reason to take me, in my opinion. Certainly the couple of films I'd done before, a couple of later, they'd done very well money-wise, and so probably helps, you know, a little bit. And then during the filming, I'll just tell you this, it's kind of an interesting story, I think, because Pappy and Columbine, they asked me, you know, they asked me as a friend, American, knowing, and they mentioned 3 names. I didn't know any of them. And I said, well, I'd take Clint because at least he did a Western, he knows how to ride a horse. And they didn't care. They said, fine. And they took Clint. When Clint came out, I took him around and introduced him to a lot of people. And we went to parties and that. And then they went over and they went to Spain, and I said, how's things going there? They were very unhappy. They said that when things were going very bad, it was a lousy. They saw some rushes, and it was not a good film, and so that was a rather strange situation. I mean, because they were honest, they were Pep and Combo. And then they put it out, and in Naples, which is a very good place for this type of film, it opened in 3rd run. And the first day, there was like 15 people in the cinema, one cinema. Second day, there was like 50 people. Third day, the cinema was full. And the 4th day, there were lines. And so they took the picture back and did some reshooting and things. And I mean, obviously, nobody knew it was going to be, I mean, Clint was certainly the perfect person for it, perfect. But later I had dinner and lunch and with both Clint and Sergio Leone. Clint didn't like Sergio, Sergio didn't like Clint. And I think that Clint, a very good actor, a very good director, everything else, I mean, he was very good, but you know, Sergio claimed he put the cigarette in his mouth because he couldn't talk, and Clint was no good. And of course, Clint thought that Sergio was a nothing person and didn't like him, and so it was just funny because between the two of them, they came up with history. I mean, and Clint obviously proved how good he was, and so did Sergio Leone in a couple of films. Like, you know, a couple of films he did were very, very good films. So that's all. I mean, it's I had very little to do with Clint. I mean, it was just a kind of a funny thing. But a lot of actors say, "Oh, I was offered that part." Well, they weren't. Nobody was offered it, and it wasn't a big film. It was a little, nothing film. I mean, it was and there were, you know, the budgets were nothing, so it was just an incredible thing. And Morricone, that he did, came up with great music, and so, you know, and then Clint went on, obviously, to great heights, and you know, and deserved it. He deserved it. And then I was asked to do a film. I looked at it, and it was exactly word for word the same film I'd done. And I thought, well, what cheats and what? And so I decided, just to have fun, I made my character kind of a funny character, a little crazy. And we did the film. And I couldn't believe, I mean, it was exactly word for word the same script as I'd already done. So at the end, I told him, I said, well, you know, I've already made this film. And so I embarrassed him because he was such lying about everything. So he took the front and put it in the back and put this in this. I finally saw it in I don't know, some other country, and I didn't recognize it. It was a real mess. Gordon was the sweetest person. Nobody was sweeter. He had a face of a killer, and the person, he was a lamb. I mean, he couldn't have been nicer. And Sebastian, my sons, and he treated them. He went with them all. They were like a godfather. I mean, he treated my sons when we were on vacation. I did a couple of things, and when I had my own stupid little films in Turkey and that, and I brought him, and you know, I always liked to have him come with me. And he was a good actor if he wanted to be, but he was a little lazy when it got to acting. And so, Cave Studios, it was a very funny thing because people came to me and they asked me to do a film, and they offered to give me a lot of this land outside of Rome. I didn't want it, and they gave it to him for some film. And he spent his money in Cave Studios, and I went out to see it, and it looked like a kind of a rundown mine, you know, a mine. It wasn't. People were cheating him left and right there. I mean, as much as I love Italians, you know, they do that, and so they were using him and cheating him out money and everything. Italians, I love them, I adore them, but I was lucky. I was probably one of the few people that kept working. And but even then, I did a lot of horrible films in Philippines and Hong Kong and Taiwan, the Shaw Brothers, because you had to, you know, you live in a certain, like it or not, you all of a sudden you have a certain lifestyle, and you have to keep bringing the money in. And so I did do those films, and but I kept working, and then, but I always liked Malibu. So I had a beautiful home in Spain on the beach, and I mean, fantastic home. And I had a home, you know, in Madrid too, and Marbella, and a couple in Rome, and that. You know, I lived a good life. I mean, I was happy, and I loved Italy, especially Italy. I loved.